Welcome to 12 Scholars, a brand new podcast dedicated to personal development. In this first series, we meet 12 inspiring people, all with a bias for being proactive. To learn more about personal development and how you can take your performance to the next level, visit our website and click the button to subscribe. In this week's show, we meet Dave Walker. Dave is a senior product engineer at MSM Aerospace, an advanced manufacturer based in North Manchester.
I were always building bogies or sledges or doing something with my bike. You've got to do this, you've got to do that. You can't start lounging about. If you lounged about, you've got to write rocketing. Stop the job. Sometimes you're better off stopping the job and saying, let's stop here now for today.
Dave started his career at Ferranti, and at the time, it was one of the largest engineering firms in the country. He later worked for Bellhouse Hartwell before joining MSM Aerospace in 2002. I've known Dave personally and professionally for the past 10 years and always admired his ability to overcome challenges and get things done. So today, we sit down with Dave to talk about being proactive and why having a bias for action is so important. So welcome, Dave, to 12 Scholars.
Welcome. All right.
How are you doing today?
All right, not so bad.
How did you end up in engineering and manufacturing components for the likes of Airbus and Boeing?
Initially, I started at Ferranti's. It were engineering, but it weren't aircraft engineering. It were more working on parts for ships, putting computer systems in. So I started there, served my time there. Within that time, though, I spent a lot of time being a union rep. And I become like deputy convener as well. So I saw both sides of the fence. That did me a lot of good, I think, in the long run, because I understood both the manufacturing side and the lads side. And I also understood basically, where the management side were coming from. So I got a bit of a good grounding there. And then I went into engineering and I spent the rest of the time up to me leaving in engineering and work study and estimating and that sort of role, which I quite enjoyed, at that time.
And what were some of your earliest memories of Ferranti?
It were an excellent place to be. I thought I would have been there for life. Things changed and they wanted to get into America and then it started going a bit pear-shaped. So I ended up leaving there. I thought, right, opportunity to come up at Bellhouse Hartwell, which were an aircraft company in West Orton. So I went in there as an engineer and ended up as production manager. From there, then carried on.
And looking back at your early career, what sort of lessons have stuck with you over the years?
The main lessons is you've got to trust people. You've got to work with people. When you've come through the ranks, you understand how people tick a bit. What gets them motivated, what makes them tick.
So very much those people skills coming through, the soft skills.
And you're coming in at the bottom level. You used to get clipped out here, the blokes used to treat you hard, but fair. And you used to give it them back anyhow. So you've got that banter as well. So you understand how everybody sort of starts to tick. And how people work together. And it's driven into you. You've got to do this. You've got to do that. You can't start lounging about. If you lounged about, you got to write rocketing, But you had a laugh as well. It weren't all about work. Because at the end of the day, you come here and you've got you're doing 8, 9, 10 hours a day shift. If you don't enjoy that when you first come in, then what's the point? You've got to enjoy what you want to be doing. I wanted to go into engineering. I want to be a motor mechanic.
Where did that fascination come from?
I've always been hands-on. I've always, from being a kid, that's another thing I think what kids sort of lose out on these days because, I were always building bogies or sledges or doing something with my bike, respraying it, changing wheels, putting different handlebars on, putting different tyres on. stripping things down, helping my dad do his motorbike, because we didn't have a car then, like, you know, always doing something like that with my hands.
So it's always getting involved in things, not just at work, but actually kind of when
outside.
you were growing up before.
Yeah. That's one of the things what's changed now, you know. These kids are more linked into computers.
And the iPhone generation, which is hard to take apart.
I mean, like, all I do is go on computers to get an update or just have a look what's going on. I'm not one for games and all that sort of thing. I'll spend my time doing a bike up or whatever, you know what I mean?
So when it comes to either taking things apart and kind of assembling things, where do you think your bias for action has actually come from?
Initially, it come from my dad. He were he were an electrical engineer. At the end of the day, I think it's pushed down from how you built up from a kid, really. My grandson, he's like mad on bikes, and he's only 3, but he'll start stripping things down and building them up, and he loves coming in garage with me, you know, because he wants to mess about and he wants to play. I love that, mate. You know,
encourage it.
It's yeah.
So would you say that having this skill of being proactive, would you say that can be trained in others?
I'd say it can, but I think you've got to have it there. It's difficult to train somebody into it, but I think it's developed into you at an early stage. I think it's down to how you are in yourself.
It's almost like that nature versus nurture.
Yeah. If you're hands-on, I think it's a lot easier to be proactive than it is if you got to teach it from a textbook.
You're kind of known for getting things done.
Right.
And, if you want a task done, give it to a busy person.
Yeah.
Dave's a busy person, always give him the task, but he'll do it, absolutely. And I've been in that situation where I've been working with Dave, and before I know it, before I even got back to my desk, that task has been done, which has been great.
Yeah.
I'm interested about when somebody gives you a task or when you come across a problem, what's actually going through your head at the time in terms of kind of getting those things done?
Well, I just have to think to myself, right, I've got this task now, right? I might have 3 or 4 tasks on at one time, but what's the most priority? Which has to be done first? Which ones can I just park and just put on one side in the back of my head? Or which ones do I have to get done? So that's where I start. And then from there, then, if I need other people, to give me an hand, then I need to draw on them people. So I'll have a word with them, or I'll see if they're busy or whatever. And then it's just a case of, right, let's get this task done. How we're going to do it. And I don't write it down. I don't go through any sort of textbook sort of thing. It's all in my head. So I just process it and I think, right, these are the tasks what I've got to do. This is how I'm going to do it. I'm going to get such and such a body. I'll get this. Right, I'll get the tools sorted. I'll get that in place and then I'll get them all together and we'll get it done. Now, I want to get involved. I need to get involved at the early stages so that the lads can get on with it and they know what they're doing and I don't have to sort of manage them, but they know what I want out of it. There again, I think it's a bit of trust and a bit of them understanding what working for you. You've got to have that ability to say to somebody, look, mate, drop that. Can you do this for me? It's important, blah, 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 blah. They'll do it for you because you can't do it all on your own.
And that's where that close relationship with people, growing up with people, having been there, developing that trust.
And getting the right person to do that job for you. Yeah. Because it's no good me going out and saying to somebody, oh, can you do that for me? If I know they might struggle with it. Because 1, I'm going to put them under pressure. And 2, I know I'm going to have to manage them. Or I'm going to have to go in and say, look, I didn't really want that. I wanted this. But if I know I can just go to somebody and say, look, I know you can do that job. Just do me that, will you? And I come back an hour later and it's done. So you want the same sort of people.
So one of the keys one of the keys in getting things done is
having the right people.
Having the right people. Know that you can't do everything by yourself.
Yeah. And understanding what people you've got available to do that task. and the capabilities. You don't want to be going out giving people a load of problems because it's not going to get sorted. All they're going to do is flip the problems back to you, and you'll end up with your head full of their problems and you're not moving forward. Whereas if you can rely on certain people to do certain tasks and you know that their tasks are going to get done, then you can be involved. To me, you've still got to be out there helping them, work with them, get it sorted and move on.
When it comes to being proactive, there's obviously pros and cons. Can you tell us a time when you've tried to be proactive and it's actually gone against you?
It does go against you now and again. What you can end up is, if you're trying to help people, sometimes it does come back on you, where they think that you're there all the time to like support them, and really you can't spend that time enough to achieve what you were going to do.
I was always taught when I grew up in manufacturing that if you're not making mistakes, you're not trying hard enough. And I suppose in particular when it comes to advanced manufacturing, and you are pushing the boundaries on a number of levels.
We're pushing boundaries here all the time because we're trying to develop new products. We're trying to make metal do stupid things at the times. You're always pushing the boundaries, so things do go wrong. Sometimes it can be expensive. I mean, we've got software now what helps us reduce that sort of impact, that failure. It can predict certain things, but it can't predict them all. And you've got to put your 2 pence in it to try and get the best out of it. But going back to what you were saying before, things go wrong. And you've got to try and recover that.
When you're faced with these challenges, what's your process, or what would be your approach to overcome these obstacles?
Initially, you've got to have a look at the actual problem, what's happening, and try and limit it, because sometimes we all get carried away and we all start throwing ideas into the pot when something goes wrong. But we've got to try and limit where something's gone wrong. Don't change too many things, because that's where we've gone wrong in the past sometimes. That's one thing where we have gone wrong, where we've threw too many ideas into the pot. And before you know where you are, you've changed all the ideas and you don't know where you've started.
Yeah, you've lost control. So one thing at a time.
Yeah, break it down. Start with where you think the main problem is and work from there, and just change one thing at a time. Sometimes it's a bit expensive to do that because you think, oh, Jesus, I've done that and it's still wrong. But at least you know that you haven't changed too many things, and you can be in the same boat where you've changed 4 or 5 things and it's gone right, and then you press another one and it goes wrong and you don't know why. But if you're just changing one at a time, you've got a lot more control.
For any new engineer or apprentice starting out, what would you say sets them apart and makes them a successful engineer?
I'd say they've got to work at the job and get a real good understanding for what you want and what you want to bring to the party. If you want to develop, then take an interest in the job, take an interest in the people underneath you as well, and and also the people who are guiding you with all the experience. Because if you don't take that on board, then you're losing an opportunity.
So very much, find a job, find a position where
you want it,
you're interested in it.
Yeah, I think if they've got an interest in that sort of occupation, then I think you get a better work balance, because that's what they're interested in. It's no good taking a role what you're totally not interested in. It's a toil to go to work. If you've got a bit of an overall interest in it, once you get into it, then, I will go back now to when I were at school. I weren't interested at school, to be honest. The only subjects I were interested in were woodwork, metalwork, and that were it. Maths, English, I weren't bothered about.
And fast forward today to the most important things that sets you aside, your passion and interest in woodwork and metalwork.
Yeah. And not only that, once I got to work, I changed because I were interested in what I was doing. When I went to college, I were more interested in it because it were part of my job. It were part of what I wanted to do, and I were working on lathes, I were working on milling machines, I were working on bench, doing a bit of welding, doing a bit of this. You were covering all aspects of the game. So it sort of like made you interested in what you were doing. And when you went into classroom, it were part of it. You were working on speeds and feeds and stuff like that. Even though when you get back, the guys turn around to you and say, what a load of rubbish that is. Double that speed, get this, get that. That's how you do the job. You know what I mean?
And we're here, we're at MSM. It's an advanced manufacturing firm in aerospace. Yeah. You would argue then that having an interest in aircraft and aerospace sets you apart as well.
Exactly. I mean, we've got a lad now, a young lad on shop floor. He's coming through as an apprentice. His dad were a welder, and now he wants to be a welder. And he's like flying through it. He's flying through his test pieces. He's flying through jobs because he wants to do it. He wants to take that as a career. You don't want to turn them off. At the end of the day, you don't want to turn people off. You want to be like bringing them in and getting the information out of them, what you need to make a successful company and develop the guys if they want to develop. Because like I say, not everybody wants to become a director, do they? Because there's a lot of responsibility. I don't think people realise the responsibility once you start climbing the ladder and how it affects not just your daily routines, but your outside routines as well. Because it does have an impact on that, and it does have an impact on your life.
It's very hard to actually leave work at work.
Exactly.
When you start taking on those extra responsibilities.
Yeah, and maybe that's something what in the future that companies and people have got to take on board, that you have got to separate the two, because at the end of the day, you've got to have a life as well. You come to work, you're spending 8-10 hours a day. You're spending 8 to 10 hours a day in bed. You ain't got a lot left.
And would you say you're the sort of person who's able to switch off when they go home?
I've learned to do that recently. I'm not one for switching off, really. I found it a bit difficult to switch off when I get in. I've had loads of nights where I've been up at 2 o'clock in the morning thinking, this is going wrong, that's going wrong. But most of the time, if you do that, and then when you get in the morning, it's all changed anyhow. So you've been worrying about stuff all night, and then when you get in, sometimes it's nothing. And you've put yourself through the mill for nothing. I think some stages, you've got to take a step back and say, am I going overboard here? And put things in place to stop you going down that sort of road. And if that's something what people have got to look at in the long term, I think that's something what we need to look at.
Is there anything particular that you've done to switch off when you do leave work?
Well, recently, I
know you're a grandfather now, twice over,
so that takes your mind off it. But I found my motorbiking, that switches you off. You've got to concentrate all the time. So by that, anything that's in your head is gone. And when I worked at Bellhouse, I must admit, I had to drive 30 mile home on motorway. And that used to relax me to a certain degree and take things out of my head, because you're having to concentrate on motorway and lane changes and roadworks and God knows what going home. So it did take a bit off you. By the time you got home, things had gone out of your head. But when I were here at MSM, I only live a short drive home. So you don't see, it's still in your head. Do you get my meaning? So it does get a bit more difficult, that. It is one of the things about living
too close.
Yeah.
Well, Dave, a few final questions. What would you say is your most proactive time of day?
I'd say when I come in the morning. Because when I come in the morning, I'm like up for it.
Unstoppable.
Yeah. And you tend to be all guns blazing, because even if you've had a bad day before, you're coming in thinking, right, I'm not going to have that today. I'm going to do this, I'm going to do that to sort of get this job done or achieve what went wrong yesterday.
And what would you say is your least proactive time of day?
I'd say I don't really have one, but maybe about 4-ish, where you're a bit, especially if things are going wrong, you get a bit, I could do with a bit of a break here now, and because sometimes walking off the job and having a chill out a bit, it does you good, because like you walk away from it and have a break, and then you come back and you think, oh yeah, hang on a minute,
you got a new set of eyes.
I've got a new set of ideas. Yeah. I've had to think about this now. I'm going home and then coming back the following day and having a fresh look at it. Stop the job sometimes. Sometimes you're better off stopping the job and saying, right, look, let's stop here now for today. Chill out. Go and do something else. Go and do another job, right, for rest at day. And then we'll come back and have a look at it in the morning. Fresh eyes, fresh. You're not
sleep on it.
Yeah, you're not full of the emotion, or you're not full of the pressure what you've been under all day to try and do it or whatever. And you sort of come back with, well, hang on a minute, we never looked at that. Or, yeah, we can do that. We can sort that out now, because you've got fresh enthusiasm.
And when it comes to procrastination, how would you overcome any form of procrastination?
Go on, Bob.
Well, it's a standard question for everyone. So, yeah. It's not in Dave's dictionary.
No, it's not.
It's not in Dave's dictionary. Okay. Well, Dave, thanks so much for being with us on 12 Scholars.
No problem.
It's been great to catch up, and as always, I've learned a few more things myself off you. So thanks very much for today.
Right, no problem, Bob. All right.
Yeah.
Cheers, pal.
That was Dave Walker, one of those people who loves to get involved and make things happen. In this episode, we learned more about being proactive and how to create a bias for action. Dave's advice is to work on your people skills, get to know your team and understand what makes them tick. Be interested and work on what you're interested in. Sometimes you may need to stop the job, reflect and come back later with a fresh set of ideas. And at the end of the day, do something, as action creates momentum. To learn more about Dave and meet other inspiring people, visit our website at 12scholars.com. In other news, our first edition of the printed journal will be available soon. It's a stunning collection of insights and inspiration, where we learn more about the guests we feature on this podcast. Head over to the website to order your copy. That was the 12 Scholars podcast. If you liked the episode, write us a review and be sure to tell one of your friends. My name is Bob, and I look forward to joining you next time.